I just finished playing through Pokémon Red again, and last year I played through Pokémon Shield. Now while the formula for these games are very much the same, you can tell that Pokémon Red was the passion project of a small dev team, but Pokémon Shield was the product of a large corporation released to meet a deadline. Now, this process has been slow, and I didn't notice it until I looked back at the older games after playing the last couple of games in the mainline series. But the Pokémon Company manages way more than just one line of video games. Instead, their focus is spread across trading card games and television shows, movies, phone apps, and spin-off games. So I explored how this change in the Pokémon franchise occurred, and what effect it has on the mainline series games of today. The idea for Pokémon came from Satoshi Tajiri, a man with a passion for video games. Tajiri would contribute to different video game magazines, writing under the pen name Game Freak. Later, he would create his own fan magazine, also called Game Freak. And after Tajiri was introduced to the Game Boy, he started to come up with a game where you catch little creatures and trade them with other players. After his pitch to Nintendo was accepted, Game Freak was changed to a fan magazine to a game development company. Now, development for Game Boy games was usually about 1 year, but the development for the first Pokemon games would be about 6 years. But instead of rushing the game and cutting corners, Game Freak would take on additional projects to keep funds coming in while they were working on Pokemon. Some of these projects included Yoshi for the NES, Mario and Wario for the Super Nintendo, and even Pulseman for the Sega Genesis. Finally, Pokemon Red and Green were released in Japan in 1996. But instead of moving on to the next game, they continued to refine and polish the game, creating a third, blue version of the game. This blue version would be the version that was localized internationally. While the games were being localized for an international market, Game Freak, Nintendo, and Creatures Incorporated formed the Pokémon Company, a new company created for the sole purpose of managing the Pokémon brand. This company would be in charge of marketing and licensing. Some of the first tasks for the Pokémon Company included managing and promoting the Pokémon cartoon and the movie, along with handling the licensing of the Pokémon trading card game to an overseas market. From here, Pokémon spread worldwide. Nintendo released the red and blue version of Pokémon internationally, pushing the sales of their Game Boy system. Creatures was working on the trading card game, among their other projects. And the Pokémon Company was managing the production of the cartoon and the movie, while handling all of the other licensing that comes from exporting and localizing those products. And Game Freak was continuing to refine the first generation games by working on a fourth version, Pokémon Yellow, that was to be released alongside the first Pokémon movie. This version would be set apart by incorporating some of the aspects from the cartoon into the game. While Game Freak was working on Pokémon Yellow, they were also thinking about and working on where the series would go next. Not only were elements from the show being added to the video game, the next generation of video games were being set up by the show. In the first episode of the show, Ash reports an unknown Pokemon to Professor Oak. This would later be revealed to be Ho-Oh, a legendary Pokemon that is a part of the next Pokemon games, Gold and Silver. But like the first generation of games, the second generation was taking longer than expected to develop. Originally, Gold and Silver were set to release at the end of the first season of the cartoon, around the time of the first movie. But Gold and Silver were not ready yet, so they were delayed. So now the question becomes what to do with the other forms of media. The new Pokemon and region are set up in the Gold and Silver version video games and then expanded upon in the other forms of media. Since the new Pokemon, characters, and region have been delayed with the games, what happens next for the card game and the cartoon? After the trading card game released all 151 Pokemon, they released a set based around Team Rocket, and then a set around gym leaders. But the cartoon had to whip up a brand new area for Ash and friends to adventure through until Gold and Silver were released. This gives us Pokemon, Adventures in the Orange Islands, a setting that would premiere in the show, but never appear in the games. And this was how the pattern started. Game Freak would develop the new characters, Pokemon, and region while they were creating the video games. And after the games were released, they would inspire the other forms of media, like the show and the card game. But slowly, this pattern would begin to change. The Pokémon Company would start doing more in-house, instead of licensing Pokémon to other companies. In the third generation, the Pokémon Company would take over the trading card game from Wizards of the Coast. In the 4th generation, the show would be released in the same year as the video games. And in the 5th generation, less time was allocated to localize the games for an international release. But starting in the 6th generation of games, we would start to understand another complication that was starting to arise with the Pokémon series. Pokémon had slowly been moving away from the sprite-based graphics of the past and slowly incorporating polygons into their games. But with Pokémon X and Y, they went all in, including all 649 Pokémon from the previous generations and the 72 new Pokémon to be included in this game. Not only that, Pokémon X and Y were accounted to have a worldwide release. So at this point, the games are being developed and localized at the same time. To accomplish this, Game Freak increased the size of their staff, reducing the number of other projects they were working on, and contracted out a lot of the Pokémon modeling to Creatures Incorporated. Also, set to debut alongside the release of the games was the cartoon, so we can see that instead of the game inspiring the show and the game were being created alongside one another. I feel like it was during this development cycle where the focus wasn't to innovate, instead the focus was to streamline and simplify to make sure that the game would be released along with the show. In the video games industry, there seems to be two big leaps in technology that every studio seems to struggle with. First, moving from pixels to polygons, and the second, moving from standard definition to high definition graphics. While the Pokémon franchise was able to take their time in the move from pixels to polygons, when Nintendo released the Switch and discontinued the 3DS, this change would now be forced upon the Pokémon series. So we now have two problems that face the series. First, the scale of what has been created in the past, and second, the time allotted to complete it. With the release of Pokémon Sword and Shield, there are almost 900 different species of Pokémon. There are now a variety of different kinds of battle systems, from double, triple, rotation, and battle royale, along with many more, and additional battle mechanics like Mega Stones and Z Crystals. The solution to this first problem was to cut or simplify all of it. This would be a very back-to-basics Pokémon game, just like Pokémon X and Y before it. Every 3 to 4 years, a new generation of Pokémon is released, with the required new Pokémon, characters, and region needed to fuel the rest of the franchise. But unlike the days of moving from Generation 1 to Generation 2, the game could not be delayed. The reason we got the Orange Island episodes was because the show needed to move forward without the games. But now the show and the games are being created together, and all of the other special events, trading cards, and other parts of the franchise require that the games debut first. Even with all of the content that was cut to scale the project down to a manageable level, the unmovable timeline still required the game to be released. Back in the first and second generations of Pokémon games, the focus was on getting the games right, so that the rest of the franchise had a good inspiration to work from. But 23 years after the first release of the games, the focus is on the brand as a whole. And as long as the games bring the new characters, Pokémon, and region, then little else needs to be changed or updated. To illustrate my point, let's go to the Pokémon website for the US, where I'm located. I've been checking the website every day since I started to work on this journal entry. You can see that the focus is not on the mainline games. Here we have a highlight of Slowpoke, but not in the video games, in the trading card game and the TV show. The Isle of Armor DLC does have a presence here on the homepage, but that's below the Pokemon Go promotion. You can see that the trading card game has its own tab, and the show and the movies have their own section, but the mainline games are lumped in with the spin-off games, like Pokemon Go, Pokemon Masters, and soon-to-be Pokemon Unite. If we go to the Events tab and look up the prize money, you can see that the prize for winning the trading card game is more than double the prize of winning at a mainline video game. So it can be hard when fans, myself included, expect more innovation out of the mainline games. When I think about all of the resources that Game Freak and the Pokemon Company have at their disposal, it can seem very strange that more of those resources are not used to benefit the mainline Pokemon games. But as I've pondered this, I've come to realize that the Pokemon Company runs on a tight schedule, and currently that schedule is rigid and unmoving. And while in the past, the mainline games have been that driving force behind the Pokemon franchise, the way things are today, the franchise is what keeps the mainline games on such a strict schedule.